This is my flat absolute. Crown. Important accomplishments. During his reign, this monarch greatly increased the power of the crown, making it an absolute monarchy, setting up an example for the rest of Europe. This defined his monarchy. He also turned his country, France, into a powerhouse, which the muscles represent. Everything that he did was to try to make France into the most powerful country in Europe, in which he was successful. He gained some land for France during his reign as king, through 4 wars. He used his power as an absolute monarch to go to war whenever he saw fit. Lastly, he reformed trade and commerce in France, using his power as an absolute to make France stronger. Jacket. Special projects that were important to him. He built the magnificent Palace of Versailles, showcasing his power in one of the greatest architectural structures to be built. The palace icon represents Versailles. He used his power as an absolute to build Versailles and keep the nobles in check, as well as raising the money to build it. The fine arts were also important to him. He starred in many plays, in which he was the center of attention, like the sun. Versailles is decorated with many paintings and beautiful things. The palette symbolizes his taste for fine things. Right sleeve. Political supporters. The stack of coins represents his main political supporter, Jean-Baptiste Colbert. Colbert organized his finances, focusing on mercantilism. This represents his rule as an absolute, as he spent all of this money on war and his own expenses, with no one to check his power. The cardinal represents his chief supporter when he was little, Cardinal Mazarin. This symbolizes his rule as an absolute monarch because when Cardinal Mazarin died, he declared that he would do it all on his own. The people represent other ministers who supported him throughout his reign as king, but he still ruled mostly on his own, as an absolute monarch. Left sleeve. Political adversaries. The orange represents William of Orange, his biggest military and later political rival as the King of England. He fought William on the battlefield and then on the throne as William became King of England. William is related to absolutist rule through many wars and power on the throne. The Pope hat symbolizes Pope Blessed the Innocent XI, whom he clashed with quite frequently. The Pope supported the Jansenists, while this absolute monarch persecuted them. The Pope relates to absolutist rule through the control of religion. The nose represents Charles II of Spain, whose death enabled the absolute monarch's grandson to claim the Spanish throne. He was opposed to the Habsburgs, of which Charles was one. This represents the absolutist rule from the absolute control of the throne. A war was fought to try to combine the thrones, an absolutist thing to go to war over. Right pant leg. Setbacks. The no sign and paper represent the revoking of the Edict of Nantes, which caused a lot of backlash. He believed that the country should follow the religion he wanted, which is absolutist. The crossed swords mean the loss of his last 2 wars, a definite setback as it put the country in debt. The chain with the money symbol represents this debt, and his use of his power to use money for his own purposes, very absolute-like. Due to the revoking of the Edict of Nantes, many people moved out of the country that could have later helped him out. Craftsmen and merchants moved out, along with their wealth. Left pant leg. His lasting legacy. The lightning bolt shows the strengthening of France and the monarchy, directly caused by his absolute rule. He also built the Palace of Versailles for posterity, leaving a legacy caused by his power. The coins represent the great deal of debt he left behind because of his excessive spending on himself as an absolute monarch, which eventually led to revolution. He changed the culture in France through art, using his power to accumulate beautiful things. Right shoe. Relationship with nobles. The peace symbol represents his pacification of the nobles. He calmed them down so he could work with and around them to be absolute. The person with headphones represents how he moved them to the court and distracted them from the real decision-making and administrative power that he kept for himself. The horse represents how he reined them in from their high and mighty status, keeping that status for himself as an absolute monarch. Lastly, the dinner in the hand shows how he placed them in service to himself. He put himself above them by putting the nobles in a place of service, not on the same level. Left shoe. Relationship with the peasants. The soldiers symbolize how he conscripted the peasants to fight in wars for him, without the consent of a parliament. This shows how much power he had, as he could draft the common people for him. The thumbs down symbolizes the poor relationship he had with his peasants, as he just used them to get more power for himself. The black bread shows the poor living conditions of the peasants, as they often had to eat black bread cut with sawdust because they didn't have enough food, while the absolute monarch was living in Versailles. Lastly, the dollar symbol in percent shows the high rate of taxes that he put on peasants to pay for Versailles in his many wars. He used his power as an absolute monarch to raise taxes to pay for his own expenses while his people lived in poverty. I took my absolute monarch to Dry Tortugas National Park, 70 miles off the coast of Key West, so he could see the historic Fort Jefferson and go snorkeling in the very blue water.